For 3 long years, Sophia Lane carried a secret that could unravel her entire career if spoken aloud. It was the kind of truth that wasn't written in files, the kind that lived only in whispers and locked doors. And now, tonight, it was coming to the surface. She straightened the crisp edges of her dress uniform, each button polished until it gleamed. With steady breath, she stepped into the Pentagon's most intimidating hallway. The corridor stretched out before her, polished marble reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights above, so flawless it looked like a mirrored river, guiding her toward an inevitable fate. Her heels clicked with sharp precision, echoing off the walls like a countdown. At the far end waited a door, heavy, oak, and foreboding. On its surface was a simple brass nameplate. General R. Thompson, Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence. Sophia had heard his name whispered across mess halls from Afghanistan to Berlin. Robert Thompson wasn't just a general. He was a legend, a Gulf War veteran who had clawed his way from the dirt of enlisted ranks to the marble floors of Washington. Some called him a genius. Others called him ruthless. Sophia suspected both were true. Rumor said he tested officers in strange ways, questions that felt like riddles, conversations that were really traps. No one walked out of his office unchanged. Her pulse quickened. She raised her hand and knocked twice. Knock. Knock. The sound cracked through the hallway like gunfire. Enter. The voice that answered was gravel carried on steel. Sophia pushed open the door. The room was exactly as she had imagined. Walls lined with commendations, framed photographs of Thompson shaking hands with presidents and kings, and a mahogany desk so massive it seemed to anchor the entire office. Behind it sat the man himself, silver-gray hair, a face carved with the lines of 1,000 battles, and eyes that missed nothing. "Captain Lane," he said, without looking up from the file in his hand. Her file. He flipped pages with deliberate precision. West Point. Top 5%. Deployed Iraq. Afghanistan. And here, he paused, tapping a redacted line with a finger. Some classified assignments. His tone shifted, curious. Interesting. Finally, his eyes lifted. Piercing. Measuring. Sit. Sophia lowered herself into the leather chair across from him. The seat seemed designed to swallow her whole, but she sat tall, posture unbroken. The silence was suffocating. Only the hum of the air conditioner and the faint murmur of Pentagon life seeped through the walls. Then, without warning, he snapped her file shut. The sound made her flinch. "Tell me, Captain," he said, his voice like a knife cutting through quiet. "What separates a good intelligence officer from a great one?" Sophia's heart thudded once hard. She had prepared for this. "Attention to detail, sir," she replied firmly. "The ability to see patterns where others see chaos. And the judgment to know when information is actionable versus when it's just noise." For a moment, nothing. Then, the ghost of a smile tugged at the general's lips. "Textbook," he murmured, almost amused. "But let me tell you what I believe." He rose from his chair and strode to the window overlooking the Potomac River. His reflection glimmered against the glass like a phantom. "In this business," he said, his voice carrying weight, "everyone is testing everyone. Every gesture, every word, every pause in conversation might be a probe." He turned back to her, his gaze sharpened into something predatory. "You young officers think you're untouchable, that your degrees and training make you warriors of the mind. But real intelligence? Real war." He jabbed a finger into the air. "That's learned in the field. Bleeding. Failing. Surviving." The air in the room thickened. Sophia sat frozen, waiting. She knew this wasn't just a lecture. This was one of his tests. And then it happened. His eyes dropped to her hand. His expression changed instantly. Color drained from his face. His jaw slackened. For a man who had stood under enemy fire, he suddenly looked afraid. "Captain Lane," his voice trembled, barely a whisper. "How in God's name do you know that signal?" The silence that followed felt unbearable. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Sophia's pulse thundered in her ears. Her fingers, still resting on the arm of the chair, had given away more than she realized. A hand signal. One she should not, could not have known. General Thompson's eyes locked on her with unnerving intensity, as though she were an artifact he had just unearthed, something impossible yet undeniable. He moved slowly back to his desk, each step deliberate. His hand hovered over the secure phone. His voice, when it came, was no longer mocking or conversational. It was ice. "Captain," he said, cold and official, "I'm going to ask you once more. How do you know classified Navy SEAL hand signals?" Sophia's chest tightened. The truth was buried under layers of secrecy, so deep they might as well have been entombed. Admitting it could destroy her career, maybe even her freedom. But lying to a general? That was a court-martial offense. Her lips parted. "Sir, I don't," Thompson snapped, slicing his hand through the air. He picked up the phone, dialed 3 sharp digits. "This is General Thompson. I need a security team in my office immediately. Full lockdown protocol." The words hit her like a blow, and then the line went dead. The general turned back toward her, his face pale but resolute. "You're not leaving this room, Captain. Not until we find out who you really are." The air conditioning hummed. Her heartbeat thundered. And Sophia Lane knew. The secret she had buried for 3 years was no longer hers to keep. What secret could make a battle-hardened general pale with fear? And what would happen when the Pentagon itself turned against her? The heavy oak door slammed shut behind Sophia Lane with a metallic thud, sealing her inside. Within seconds, 2 armed guards appeared, their boots striking the floor in perfect rhythm. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence said everything. Sophia sat in silence as General Thompson remained behind his desk, his hand still resting on the secure phone like it was a loaded weapon. His eyes never left hers. Minutes later, the door opened again. This time, a woman in a dark uniform stepped in, crisp and commanding. Colonel Evelyn Hayes. Her reputation preceded her, a specialist in interrogation, known for dismantling lies the way a surgeon dismantles tissue. "Captain Lane," Hayes said flatly, setting a thick file onto the table. "You'll come with me." Sophia rose, every movement watched. The guards flanked her as she was led through a maze of corridors, deeper into the Pentagon's underbelly. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming like bees trapped in glass. Finally, Hayes stopped at a reinforced steel door. With a keycard swipe, it opened to reveal a cold, windowless room. A single table, 2 chairs, and a camera in the corner, its red light blinking like an unblinking eye. "Sit." Sophia obeyed. The door locked shut. For the next 6 hours, Sophia was passed between interrogators like a prisoner on a carousel. Each one came with their own strategy. Calm questioning, aggressive accusations, sarcastic remarks meant to needle her into breaking. Major Williams was the third to sit across from her. He was younger, sharp-eyed, his voice carrying the smugness of someone who thought he'd already cracked the case. "Let's go through this again," Williams said, flipping through pages of her file. "Iraq, 2020 to 2021. Afghanistan, 2022. He paused, tapping a section with his pen. "And then, here we are. An 8-month gap. Marked only as classified assignment. Convenient, don't you think?" Sophia's voice was steady, though her throat ached from repetition. "As I've explained, sir, I was assigned to a Joint Intelligence Fusion Center. Mission details above my clearance level. I cannot disclose more." Williams leaned back, crossing his arms. His smirk widened. "How interesting. We contacted every fusion center that was operational during that time. None have any record of you." The words hung in the air like a trap snapping shut. Sophia clenched her jaw. They were trying to exhaust her, drag her down into contradictions. Classic interrogation. Repeat, repeat, repeat until fatigue forced a mistake. Colonel Hayes returned then, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and another file so thick it looked like a phone book. She placed it on the table with a deliberate thump. "Captain," Hayes said, her voice cool and razor-sharp, "we've been here for hours. Your story hasn't changed. That's either remarkable consistency or remarkable preparation." She slid the file open, revealing documents, photographs, financial records, even personal letters. "We've examined everything. Your deployments, your relationships, your bank accounts. There's a piece missing. Something you're not telling us. Sophia's hands curled into fists beneath the table. Her heart thumped so hard it hurt. Let's stop dancing, Hayes said, leaning forward. Her eyes bore into Sophia's. You flashed a Navy SEAL hand signal in the general's office. A signal you should not even know exists. That makes you one of two things, a traitor or a keeper of a secret buried deeper than even my clearance. The silence between them was suffocating. Sophia's voice finally broke it, slow and measured. If I were to hypothetically know something classified above my current clearance, she paused, choosing each word like it could be her last. What would be the proper procedure for addressing that situation? For a heartbeat, Hayes said nothing. Then, without a word, she rose and left the room. Sophia was alone. The camera light blinked. The hum of the air conditioner pressed against her ears. Her hands trembled slightly, hidden beneath the table. Minutes dragged like hours. Then the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Hayes. An older man entered, dressed not in the sharp uniform of an interrogator, but in the quiet authority of someone higher. His uniform bore the stars of an admiral. His nameplate read, Mitchell. He closed the door behind him with a deliberate click. No guards followed. Captain Lane, he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. Or should I say, journalist Jessica Morgan. The words detonated in the room. Sophia froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Her real name. A name she hadn't heard in years. Admiral Mitchell moved to the table, pulled a small black device from his pocket, and switched it on. A faint hum filled the room. A signal jammer. The camera's red light flickered and died. He sat across from her, his eyes softer than any she'd seen today. You held it together well. 6 hours of questioning and not a crack. Sophia's eyes burned with tears she had sworn not to shed. Admiral, I wasn't sure you'd remember me. Remember? Mitchell gave a humorless laugh. What you did in Syria is seared into my memory like fire. The question is, how the hell did you end up here? Her voice broke as she explained. The signal. Thompson's reaction. The interrogation. Every detail spilled out like a confession. Mitchell's jaw clenched tighter with each word, his anger simmering like a storm. Idiots, he muttered at last. They nearly burned an operation that took 3 years to set in motion. His eyes fixed on her. Tell me the truth. Did you mention Syria? To anyone? No, sir, she said, shaking her head firmly. I've said nothing. Operational security intact. Mitchell leaned back, relief washing over his weathered face. Good. Because what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. Ever. After tonight, it may never even be spoken aloud again. The hum of the jammer filled the silence. Sophia sat perfectly still, heart pounding, as Mitchell prepared to unlock secrets buried deeper than even she had imagined. What did Sophia truly do in Syria? And why was the Pentagon willing to break her to keep it hidden? The hum of the jammer filled the interrogation room like a low drone, steady and relentless. Admiral Mitchell's face was lit only by the harsh overhead light, casting sharp shadows that made his features look carved in stone. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. 3 years ago, he said, voice low, you weren't just embedded with a joint task force. You were part of something so secret that even mentioning it could unravel lives. Do you remember your code name, Captain? Sophia's throat tightened. She hesitated, then whispered, Ghost Walker. The name hung in the air like smoke, carrying memories she had buried deep. Mitchell's eyes softened with recognition. That's right, Ghost Walker. And you earned that name the hard way. For the first time in hours, Sophia allowed herself to breathe, but the flood of memories came rushing back with it. It was Syria. The desert wind carried the smell of smoke and diesel, the horizon burning orange with distant fires. Sophia wasn't Captain Lane back then. She wasn't even Sophia. She was Jessica Morgan, a war correspondent for Global News. At least, that's what the world believed. But beneath that cover, she had been something else. Her assignment had been clear. Infiltrate a terrorist cell posing as a journalist, gather intelligence, and relay it back to a Navy SEAL team operating in the shadows. Her cover story was airtight. Her camera, her notepad, even her social media presence, all fabricated to perfection. Team leader Rodriguez said you were the fastest study he'd ever seen, Mitchell recalled, his voice breaking through her memories. By the end of your first week, you were communicating with his men like you'd been one of them for years. Sophia smiled faintly despite the ache in her chest. She could still hear Chief Petty Officer Miguel Rodriguez's gruff Texas drawl. At first, he barely spoke to her, treating her like an outsider. By the mission's end, he was calling her Doc, the name soldiers gave to someone they trusted with their lives. The insertion went perfectly, Mitchell continued, his tone shifting into the cadence of an after-action report. You gained access to the cell within 48 hours, built their trust, fed us details about their planned operations. For 3 weeks, you gave us an edge. But Sophia remembered the moment everything collapsed. The safe house. She had walked in one morning expecting routine, intel drops, whispered exchanges, carefully coded notes. Instead, the room was empty, except for one thing, a bloodstain on the floor, and a single phrase scrawled in Arabic, "The Americans are here." Her stomach had dropped. The realization hit her like a blade to the chest. The cell had known from the start. They hadn't trusted her. They had used her. They fed us false information, Mitchell said, his jaw tight. They used you to track our safe houses, our movement patterns. And then, when they were ready, they struck. Sophia's eyes closed. She could still hear the chaos in her earpiece, the frantic shouts of Rodriguez's team as gunfire rattled through their comms. We're pinned. Buildings surrounded. The extraction bird went down in flames. Backup was hours away. 8 men, cornered, outnumbered, bleeding. Mitchell's voice softened. That's when you made the decision. Sophia opened her eyes, tears threatening to spill. She remembered it vividly, the way her hands shook as she ripped off her cover. She could have vanished into the desert, disappeared into her false identity. But instead, she blew it all. She coordinated the rescue herself, using signals and codes she'd learned in shadows, directing fire support, guiding the SEALs through the chaos. 8 American lives, Mitchell said quietly. You saved them, at the cost of your cover, your identity, and nearly your life. Sophia's heart hammered as she sat in that cold Pentagon room, remembering the heat, the smoke, the desperate gunfire, and the silence afterward. She had survived, but she hadn't walked away unscarred. Mitchell leaned back in his chair, studying her. The men you saved? They never forgot. Neither did I. But Washington, he exhaled, shaking his head. Washington prefers shadows. To them, you were an asset. Disposable. You were buried. Reborn as Captain Sophia Lane. The world never knew Ghost Walker. Sophia swallowed hard. For years, she had carried that secret like a stone in her chest. Now here it was, dragged into the light. Mitchell's expression hardened. And General Thompson's little test. That nearly destroyed it all. Do you realize what would have happened if he pushed further? If he exposed you before the wrong people? Her voice was faint. I didn't mean to use the signal. It was instinct. Instinct, Mitchell repeated, almost to himself. Instinct that saved lives, but also instinct that can expose you. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Mitchell leaned in, his eyes sharp again. Listen to me carefully. After tonight, you and I may never speak again. The op is still classified, deeper than you can imagine. If the wrong ears catch even a whisper of Syria, everything burns. You understand? Sophia nodded. Her throat was dry, but her voice was steady. I understand. Mitchell reached across the table, his voice lowering to a near growl. Then hear me, Ghost Walker. The Pentagon thinks they're interrogating you. But in reality, you're the one holding a truth so powerful, it terrifies even generals. The weight of his words pressed into her chest. The truth. The shadows. The choice she made in Syria. And now, the very walls around her wanted that truth buried again. If Sophia was once Ghost Walker, what new dangers would surface now that her cover was fractured? And who, inside the Pentagon, truly wanted the truth buried forever? The signal jammer's hum faded as Admiral Mitchell switched it off. The red light on the camera blinked back to life, as if nothing had happened. To anyone watching the footage, those last 20 minutes would look like silence, a woman staring at a wall while an admiral shuffled papers. But Sophia knew better. The truth was alive again, beating like a second heart inside her chest. Mitchell stood, smoothing the wrinkles of his uniform. His expression shifted into something unreadable, cold, professional. "Captain Lane," he said loudly enough for the recording devices to catch, "you will remain here until this matter is resolved." He turned on his heel and walked out, the door slamming shut behind him. Sophia was alone once more. She stared at her reflection in the polished steel table, the weight of his words pressing down on her. Ghost Walker. The name felt heavy in her mind, a ghost of herself she thought she'd buried. Hours blurred. Interrogators came and went, circling back to the same questions, the same accusations. Sophia's responses never wavered. She felt like a record stuck on repeat, but beneath her calm exterior, her mind raced. Why now? Why was the signal she used enough to shake Thompson, enough to drag her into this room? Who had tipped him off? Her thoughts were interrupted when the door creaked open again. General Thompson entered this time, his steps measured, his face pale but stern. The guards didn't follow. It was just the two of them. He didn't sit right away. Instead, he circled the table like a predator sizing up its prey. "Captain," he said finally, his voice quieter than before, "you put me in a difficult position." Sophia kept her posture rigid. "Sir, with respect, I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Thompson stopped directly across from her, his steel-gray eyes drilling into hers. "Misunderstanding? You made a gesture only a handful of people in this world should know. Men I've bled beside. Men buried beneath flags. And you," his jaw clenched, "you're not one of them." Sophia said nothing. Her silence was her only shield. Thompson exhaled through his nose, frustrated. "I've built my career on exposing lies, Captain. On finding cracks in stories told too smoothly. And right now you're flawless. Too flawless. That tells me one thing. You're hiding something far larger than I can see." He finally pulled out the chair and sat, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "So tell me, why do I get the feeling you're not the person this file says you are?" The room thickened with silence. Sophia's chest ached with the weight of truths she could never give him. Suddenly, the door burst open. Colonel Hayes stormed in, her expression sharp. "General, a word." Thompson's eyes flicked toward her, irritation flashing. "This better be important." "It is." Hayes gestured sharply, and for the first time Sophia noticed the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her jaw. Reluctantly, Thompson rose and followed her out. The door slammed shut again, leaving Sophia alone in the humming silence. She leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly against her lap. Her mind replayed Mitchell's words, "You're holding a truth so powerful, it terrifies even generals." Minutes later, the door opened softly. Hayes stepped in alone. Her tone was different now, quieter, almost personal. She pulled up the chair opposite Sophia and sat down without ceremony. "I've been doing this 18 years, Hayes began, folding her hands on the table. "I've interrogated traitors, spies, and patriots who sacrificed their sanity for this country. And I've never seen anyone hold out the way you just did." Sophia stayed silent, but her eyes met Hayes's. Hayes leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. "I don't know who you really are. I don't know what you're hiding. But I can tell you this. The fact that Mitchell himself walked into this room, that tells me you're not just another officer." Sophia's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Hayes studied her carefully, as if weighing the risk of saying more. Finally, she whispered, "You've got powerful ghosts in your corner. That makes you dangerous. To some, it makes you untouchable. To others, it makes you a target." Her words lingered in the air like smoke. Before Sophia could respond, Hayes stood abruptly, her professional mask snapping back into place. She headed for the door. "Stay sharp, Captain. The walls have ears. And not everyone here wants you alive." The lock clicked shut behind her. Sophia sat frozen, her mind reeling. Not everyone wanted her alive. She stared at the camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. She wondered who was watching now. Thompson? Hayes? Someone else entirely? Her thoughts churned. Mitchell had said the op was still classified. Hayes hinted she was a target. Thompson wanted the truth at any cost. Her secret was unraveling faster than she could contain it. Hours later, the door opened once more. General Thompson re-entered, his expression calmer, almost regretful. Behind him, Colonel Hayes and Admiral Mitchell followed. The sight of the three together made Sophia's pulse spike. This wasn't routine anymore. This was judgment. Thompson stepped forward, his voice heavy. Captain Lane, or whoever you are, I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I thought I was testing a young officer's instincts. Instead, I stumbled into something far greater. He glanced at Mitchell, then back at her. You're not what this file says. You're something else. And for reasons I may never fully understand, you're also someone this country owes more than it can admit. The word struck Sophia like a blow. For the first time in 3 years, someone was acknowledging her truth, yet still keeping it locked away. Would the Pentagon finally reveal Sophia's true past, or bury her deeper than before? And what price would she pay for being Ghostwalker? The air in the room felt electric, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. 3 figures stood before Sophia: General Thompson, Colonel Hayes, and Admiral Mitchell. Their presence together was not just unusual. It was historic. It was Judgment Day. Sophia sat tall in the chair, though her heart pounded against her ribs. Her throat was dry, her hands cold. She knew whatever happened next would decide her future, whether she left this building as Captain Sophia Lane or disappeared forever into the shadows. General Thompson was the first to speak. His voice was steady but tinged with something rare for him: respect. Captain, he began, I need to own my mistake. Yesterday, I thought I was pushing you into a corner to test your mettle. I never imagined I would uncover a ghost. The word lingered. Ghost. He continued, his steel-gray eyes softer now. I have seen soldiers crumble under pressure, far less than what you endured in this room. But you didn't bend. You didn't break. That kind of discipline, he exhaled sharply. That's not training. That's something forged in fire. Sophia swallowed hard, the tears she had fought for hours threatening to surface. Admiral Mitchell stepped forward then, his tone more personal, almost fatherly. They don't know what you did in Syria, but I do, and so do 8 men who are alive today because of you. Sophia closed her eyes. Rodriguez's voice echoed in her memory, his laughter, his trust. She could still see the safe house burning, hear the chaos in her comms. She could still feel the choice she made in that split second, to reveal herself, to sacrifice her cover, to save lives. Mitchell's voice softened. Ghost Walker wasn't just a code name. It was who you became. The one who slipped into shadows, carried their weight, and bore them alone. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Sophia opened her eyes to find Colonel Hayes watching her, arms crossed. Hayes had been her adversary for hours, her interrogator, her accuser. But now, her gaze held something else. Respect. Admiration. I've been in this business 18 years, Hayes said, stepping closer. I've interrogated men who thought themselves unbreakable. None of them held as steady as you. Whatever you are, Captain, you're not ordinary. And you're no traitor. Sophia's chest tightened. Hearing that from Hayes felt like vindication after a lifetime of silence. Thompson finally nodded. You're free to go, Captain. This matter is closed. Officially, it never happened. His words were final, but Sophia understood their meaning. The truth would remain buried. Ghostwalker would stay a secret, hidden from the world. When she stepped out of that room hours later, the Pentagon halls felt different. Lighter, yet heavier all at once. Officers passed her without a glance, unaware of the storm that had raged behind those locked doors. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the Potomac River, the water shimmering with streaks of gold and crimson. Sophia walked slowly toward the parking lot, each step echoing with the weight of everything she had endured. On her chest, the Navy Cross gleamed in the fading light. It was more than a medal. It was a silent truth, a hidden acknowledgement of a past that would never be spoken of. For the first time in 3 years, Sophia felt free. Not because the secret was gone, but because she had faced it, endured it, and lived to walk out the other side. She wasn't just Captain Sophia Lane, Army Intelligence Officer. She wasn't just Jessica Morgan, the journalist cover she had once worn. She was Ghost Walker. And though the world might never know her story, she knew it. And so did the men she saved. The wind swept gently across the river, whispering like a voice from the past. Sophia paused at her car door, staring out at the horizon. She thought of Rodriguez and his men, of Mitchell's warning, of Hayes's parting words. The shadows weren't done with her. Not yet. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new dangers, new ghosts. But tonight, she allowed herself one rare moment of pride. For once, she was not hiding. She was not running. She was simply alive. If you were in Sophia's place, forced to carry a truth so heavy it could cost you everything, would you keep it buried? Or would you reveal it, no matter the price?